All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to AI for Home Inspectors. Something we've done in the past is have everyone who's joining just comment where they're from in the chat. So if you all want to do that, to just let us know you're there and can hear us and see us, that would be awesome. Not seeing any chats yet. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Okay, people are starting to come in. Oh, I like Orlando, Pennsylvania. We have some East Coast presence. That's awesome to see. Cool. Well, welcome everyone. For those of you who haven't seen me or met me before, I'm Olivia. I'm an SEO specialist here at Spectora. And what that means is I do a lot of marketing and writing work. And recently I've been incorporating AI into a lot of my processes. So we at Spectora thought this would be a fun webinar to do. We've been looking into how you guys can use AI, where it can really move the needle in terms of home inspection, and where AI even fits into our industry. So that's what we're going to jump into today. And I am joined by Spectora's head of engineering, JP. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hello, yeah, JP Narowski, head of engineering here, and I'm considering myself the chief AI officer at Spectora. And part of my mission is to understand and kind of demystify AI and figure out, like, okay, there's a lot of fluff out there. Like, what's the practical uses for AI today within our company, and also for our inspectors, for future tooling. So I'm pretty obsessed with the technology, but it's also kind of, there's a lot to it. And yeah, that's a little bit about me and kind of what brings me here.
Great. So let's jump into it. First of all, let's just get from the chat, show of hands, who has used AI before? Anyone? If not, that is A-okay. We will just go into our presentation and what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to start with a really basic overview, helping you understand what AI is, in case any of you all are brand new to this and haven't really researched it yet, or feel a little bit hesitant about understanding what it is and incorporating it into your day-to-day work. We're also going to have a great conversation about the potentials we see for AI in the home inspection industry, because it can be a really great tool, and because it's so new, the options are kind of limitless. So JP and I are going to walk you through that. And then most of this presentation is going to be focused on ChatGPT. So for anyone who's familiar, we'll dive into that and the use cases of ChatGPT, how you can get it to speed up marketing practices such as blog posts, social media, emails, and then even your reports. So like narratives and descriptions and all of that good stuff. And then after that, we're going to do a live demo together so everyone can get a feel for how it works. And that'll be fun. We'll be asking for some audience participation there. And then we're going to leave about 10-15 minutes at the end just for an open Q&A to answer all of your questions, and so that you can get what you really want out of this webinar. So let's get into it. So what is AI? In the most basic terms, artificial intelligence is the intelligence of machines or software. JP, do you have anything to add to that? And good explanation?
I think there's, if you get into the nuance, there's lots of different types of AI. We're going to be talking about generative AI today. But I think, less about what it is and more about kind of the fact that, and then I've shared this with my team. It's like, it's something that it sounds kind of scary and amorphous, and a lot of you have dabbled in it, but really it's just a tool. It's just something else to use. And in this case, generative AI helps with, all the things that we're going to cover today as far as blog writing and so on. But it's not something to be afraid of. I think there's kind of a fear of, is AI going to take my job? Is AI going to do X, Y, and Z? And I kind of approach it from the perspective of, maybe in the very long term, 5-10 years from now, there are jobs that will be replaced with AI. But in the short term, I think AI might not take your job, but someone using AI might take your job. So that's where I look at, it's being important to embrace it and learn the nuances of what it can do now, because there are going to be people in every role, and not just home inspections, not just customer service, engineering, et cetera, that come in and say, okay, I'm going to get like the 5% gains. I'm going to get the 10% gains by learning what AI is and what it isn't. Because there's a lot of things that it can do, it does poorly or it doesn't do well. And there's a lot of hype. So I think, if I had one recommendation, it's just to get to know it enough to say, okay, there are certain things it can do well, and I'm going to increase my productivity or my team's productivity with that in mind. But yeah, otherwise, just experimenting with it and not being afraid.
Yeah, and thank you for that, JP, because that's exactly what we're going to go over today. Is like right now, AI is absolutely not going to inspect homes. It can't do that. But what it can do is save you a lot of time when it comes to tasks that you might not have gotten into being a home inspector to do, but are necessary anyways. So like blog writing, you probably didn't become a home inspector to run a full blog and create a lot of content. The great news with AI is it's a practical tool that can speed that up. And what might have taken you an hour, 2 hours, even more, depending on how fast of a writer you are, can now be essentially done in the course of like 15 to 30 minutes. So we pulled some home inspectors and asked them how they're using AI. And that's what we're really focusing on today. It sounds like those of you who have used AI are using it for blog writing, for emails, for social media, and some for report descriptions and narratives, which is just like so cool to me, because as an AI nerd, I love that you all are thinking about this too. And it's really fun to figure out together how this can best level up our industry and potentially change it without being something like JP touched on to be scared of. Like, how can we learn to use it to our advantage and not be afraid that it's going to be something that disrupts our industry in a negative way? So with that, there are two real buckets that we're going to get into today of how you all can easily use AI in your business practices. As I mentioned, the first one is marketing work, and the second one is report writing. So when we talk about generative AI and specifically ChatGPT, it's really, really good at writing. So that's what we're going to demo for you today. And then I think it's interesting, just before we get into the weeds, looking forward, where do we see the intersection of AI and home inspection? I'm going to let JP touch on this because he has some really great ideas, and then I'll add my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think some of the things that we'll demo today are some of the, more immediate use cases and easier, like a little less fringe use case. But then I look at, okay, could you use it to find new agents to connect with? Could you build a list of agents in a specific area and turn it into a spreadsheet? These are things that are possible. And there are some tools that are better for just, pure writing and analysis, like ChatGPT is probably the best for that. And then there are other tools like Bard, which is also free. And that one has access to it's Google's product. So it has access to all of the internet, and you can use it for more real-time data. So writing tweets, if you wanted to incorporate anything that was topical and relevant to the, the short term, Bard can help with that. But, doing research and building out marketing strategies is one thing. Writing and report writing could be another that we're going to cover today. Just writing comments, writing summaries, writing things in a more creative way, in a more, way that could be unique to you based on tone and so on. There's a lot of use cases, a lot of potential, and we're evaluating this here at Spectora too. Where are some easy ways that we could potentially incorporate this into our product to make things easier for you as well. So I know that was a little bit vague, but I think that the specific thing that may not be covered here, and it's a little more advanced but worth looking into, is just trying to gather research for like, where do you want to grow your business? You can't use the information kind of verbatim because it can quote unquote hallucinate, which means it's trying to answer the question, but it sounds factual, but it isn't. But there is still a lot of interesting use cases for research-based approach, which I could see being interesting if you're looking to say, okay, how do I expand in my market? Who do I need to connect with? What agents are available? What other brokers or other people that might be worth connecting with? Can you build me a list? Can you give me their contact info? That kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's absolutely one of the ways you can get really into it and get a little bit more complex with that. For anyone who really wants to dive into that, after this webinar is over, we're sending everyone who signed up a whole list of resources for how you can learn ChatGPT along with other tools like Google's Bard. But today we're going to keep it really basic. And for me, I'm a content writer. That's what I do for a lot of my job. And so I've been using ChatGPT every week, if not daily, to help speed up my processes. And when I started doing that, my biggest thought is this could help home inspectors so much. So let's get into exactly how. So ChatGPT, as we talked about, if you're wondering why we are repeating this word over and over and over again, ChatGPT is a tool that is really good at writing. So in its own words, ChatGPT is an AI-powered language model designed to have conversations with people. It's like having a chat companion that can understand what you say and respond in a natural and human-like way. So this is what it says it is itself. To me, this explanation was a little bit jargony and went above what I needed to know about what ChatGPT is. So in plain simple language and practical use, it's a chatbot. And it's really, really good at mimicking human language and speeding up processes that involve writing. So what that means for anyone who hasn't used ChatGPT is if you go in there and write in a question or a prompt to ChatGPT, it's going to feel like you might be talking to a person. It doesn't sound like a machine is answering you. It is great at mimicking the ways that we have talked and that we write and that we create content. And so that's why it's such a useful and powerful tool. And I see a really great comment here in the chat from Sierra. I'm going to show this on the screen. Sierra Inspection Services is saying you need to be knowledgeable in the subject info to edit responses because it still returns inaccurate answers sometimes. And that is a hugely important point. We'll go over some best practices for blog posts and everything, but a big caveat is just like humans, AI isn't perfect. And everything you do with ChatGPT, you should be fact checking. You should not be relying on that information because like 100% to be accurate, because sometimes it gets it wrong. And that's okay. It's still really useful, but you can't put 100% trust in the fact that it's going to get it right all the time, because it probably won't. So using ChatGPT for blog posts, this is my bread and butter, and what I think a lot of home inspectors can probably take away from this, because to grow your web presence, to get your SEO going, and to provide useful resources for the clients you work with, and even potentially for realtors, you should be getting some content up on your blog. So as I said, let's jump into some best practices. You should always proofread and edit, because you don't want to be putting out information that's not factual. Generally speaking, when you put out a blog post, I'm sure you, like I do a lot of research, make sure you're having appropriate sources and that you're not just putting BS out all over the internet, and that's highly important. Another thing is making sure the content is high quality and accurate. As we said, AI isn't perfect. So again, just making sure that all your facts are correct and that everything that you're getting from it is something you would be comfortable passing on as a resource to whoever you anticipate reading your blog posts. And then lastly, because I'm an SEO specialist, you know we're going to go into Google's guidelines and what Google thinks about all of this. They've been a little bit tight-lipped about exactly what the practices as a writer are using AI, but if you think that it would be useful for your audience to know that you completely wrote a blog post with AI, you should disclose that. You can just write a little disclaimer on your post and that's all good. Basically what that is giving you a check and balance both with Google and with whoever's eyes are on your post, that they know where this information is coming from. And, you know, we'll get into this in a little. I tend to do a bit of rewriting after I use AI to create a blog post, and I would recommend you do too. And like, if that's the case, no, you don't need to say, oh, this blog post was written by ChatGPT. But if you were getting something from ChatGPT and with no edits, no anything, just putting that on your website as a blog post, it's a good idea to disclose that. Let's pause for a minute and look at the chat. Does anyone have any questions so far? been trying to figure out how to use it to speed up serial number searches for appliances, but it doesn't quite hit the mark, as you said. Yeah, that sounds about right. So for anyone who hasn't used ChatGPT before, it doesn't browse the internet, so that's really important. If there are like things that you're trying to find out that have to do with really current information, or if it just can't access the information, like it's too niche for ChatGPT to find, it might not get it quite right. And that's where, as JP mentioned earlier, there are other tools you can use that do have access to the internet and more current information, like Bard. And again, we'll send you a resource packet at the end, so if you want to, you can dig into that. But yeah, emphasizing over and over, it really is important to be fact-checking. So when I go to write a blog post with ChatGPT, I start really simple, and I'm walking you through the process I do on a daily basis. So for example, if I was a home inspector, I could write something like, "Hi ChatGPT, I have a home inspection company. Can you write me a blog post about the most common defects in a home inspection?" And then ChatGPT returns an answer. And as you can see, it's laid it out in a format that has an introduction and a title, and it'll really give you all the things you need. So that is like the most basic thing you can do. And I'd encourage anyone who wants to go jump in and just try it yourself and figure out what works for you, because as we'll get into, the more detailed the prompts, the better. And the better you can prompt it and give it more information, the more likely it is to return a final product that looks like what you want it to look like. So that being said, I always start with an outline. Why do I start with an outline? That's my own personal preference, but it allows me to take out some of the overhead work. Meaning that if I go in and I ask ChatGPT for a blog post, they might give me a blog post that doesn't have the headings I want, or the topics I want to cover, or anything like that. And it would be a lot more editing work. Whereas if I ask ChatGPT for an outline and prompt it to give me an outline, I can see the information it's pulling and what topics I want to cover. And so why I love that is it gives me the opportunity to go in and edit the outline first, so that, say I'm writing a blog post about a home inspection in Boston, Massachusetts, which for anyone who hasn't met with me yet, that's where I'm based, so that's why I keep bringing up Boston. But let's say it just didn't include anything about mold, and it's like, okay, I'm seeing mold in a lot of homes in Boston, I want to make sure it includes that. I can then edit my outline and give it back to ChatGPT and say, hey, I want to include mold, and it'll know to pull that. So that's just a note I have for speeding up my processes. So as we showed in the last slide, I had an outline and I said, great, thank you. Can you write me a 1,000-word blog post based on that outline? And it did. And it's awesome. And all of that work, start to finish, I timed myself, took me 2 minutes and 38 seconds to give ChatGPT those prompts and to get back a full blog post. So just for some context, if I was writing a blog post without ChatGPT, just planning an outline and getting a first draft done would take me a couple hours at most. And I think that's where you see it being so powerful, is when it can really condense those processes and take off so much of the overhead work and save you time. Because as we know, we're all busy, time is money, and the more you can get done, the more effective you're going to see your processes become, and then the more it can impact your business and faster, which is awesome. So for prompting, and I think it might be good here to give a little example of what prompting is. JP, do you have a good explanation of like what exactly a prompt is for ChatGPT?
Yeah, I think it's just querying this. You're kind of speaking to the AI, but it's more or less just communicating with it and being very clear. So a prompt is just a question. When you input something into ChatGPT, that's considered a prompt. But there's kind of an art, and a lot of getting good value out of ChatGPT and any AI, generative AI platform, is to know how to effectively prompt. So as this heading says, be very specific. So people go to the extent of saying, here's who I am, here's like the tone I want, here's the information I need, here's the format I need it in. And you can kind of set this up in the top of your chat. And this is a lot more advanced, but if you're starting to use it for more powerful purposes, you are not going to be very effective without powerful prompting. If it's a simple question like, what's the capital of France? Then you don't really need much for that. But if you're like, I want a blog post, but I want it in this tone, the goal is to rank highly in Google for these keywords. You can even ask, I guess I'm interrupting myself, but you can go through that process and get a lot more specific, and period. And then my next thought was, you can even ask ChatGPT to write you prompts. And this is kind of another more advanced technique, but it's something that I found extremely powerful. You're like, hey, what would be the prompt? Can you write me a prompt if I was wanting to create an SEO article with this goal? And it'll actually ask you a bunch of questions, being like, hey, what do you want to rank for? What do you want the tone to be? And then it'll write you a prompt, and you can give it back to ChatGPT as well. And then it will actually, because it knows how to query itself a lot better than you do. So that may be a little bit more advanced, but prompting is very powerful.
Exactly. And I figured I'd let JP take that explanation because he really is the expert here. But keeping it basic just for our purposes, the more details you give ChatGPT, the more you'll have to work with. So, for example, think of ChatGPT as your assistant or just someone you're talking to and asking to do something. If I ask someone, hey, can you write me a blog post that's just about the most common defects in home inspection? That's great, but it's not going to be very unique and it might not fit your vision. So talk to it like you're trying to explain something to someone. So the example prompt I used here as a good example is, I own a home inspection business in Boston, Massachusetts. Can you write me a blog post listing the common defects found in Massachusetts homes? Be sure to include a section about mold, and then here are the headings I want included. And then this prompt would cut off, but I could go on to include any headings or sections that I wanted in the actual blog post. And as JP said, you can even touch on tone. So if your business is conversational and friendly, you can say, yes, I want this written in a conversational and friendly manner. And going beyond that, if you want to get really into it, you can even give it samples of other blog posts you've written, and it will match your tone and voice. So this is just getting into why it's so powerful, and also how you can really get the best out of it and make it work for you and make it something that's unique. Because I know a lot of concerns that writers have is, if I'm using ChatGPT, is it just going to be the same response over and over? Is this just going to look like everyone else's content? And the answer to that is prompting. You can get specific with it, but if you're just asking it the most basic questions, it probably will look similar to something that someone else is producing. So again, here's an example of a detailed prompt with better context. I put in the basic outline, and it can completely write to that outline. And with that, you have a finished blog post. So that was a lot of information. Let's pause. Does anyone have any questions about writing blog posts, about these processes, or anything we've talked about so far? All right. If anyone does, feel free to ask them in the chat and we will catch up on that. But let's move next to social media, which is another area that can move the needle. So for ChatGPT specifically, you obviously can't have it create videos for you or photos right now as it functions. But what you can have it do is caption all of your social media posts, which, as a marketer, there's so many times I have gotten caught up trying to post something that I just can't think of a good caption, or I overthink it. And this is where that can be really helpful. So here's an example. It can know hashtags as well. So if you prompt it and let it know who you're trying to target with your social media post, what area you live in, it can pull hashtags and really do the whole post other than the actual content for you. Let's say if you're attaching a photo or a video. So the example I used here, sorry, I accidentally clicked to the next slide, is I wanted a caption for a photo that was of a roof inspection. And what it gave me first was Roof inspection alert. As a home inspector in Boston, Massachusetts, I want to empower realtors and homebuyers with the knowledge and potential red flags when it comes to roofs. Watch this video to learn what water damage on a roof looks like to the naked eye. So with that, it wasn't exactly what I was looking for. So I went in and I asked for an alternative caption that maybe encapsulated different tones, and it put out 3 different options. And again, this is something that isn't maybe perfect when you're getting the results, but I had these all in a matter of minutes, and that's why it can speed up your processes so much. And then another really cool thing you can do that's just a huge time saver, if you want to post something on, let's say, for example, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, you can prompt it, like JP and I were talking about, with those specific details. So let's say I have that post about roof inspections, I have a video of myself inspecting a roof, and I want to post that on these 3 different platforms. I can say, hey, can you please give me these captions or posts that match this different social media guidelines, that match the different tones that I have in my social media, and it can return that. And so something really cool, I don't know if you can see at the very bottom, but it actually made sure to stay within Twitter's character limit. And again, like that's something that you would, before AI, have had to spend 3 different times making each one of these individual posts, where with AI, you can get that all in 1 second.
Yeah, one other quick thing I wanted to say to that too, and I think you may have mentioned this, but it's very much a conversation. Like if you ask it a thing and it gives you a result, often, almost always, you're modifying it. Like, hey, can you make this shorter? Can you make this longer? Can you change the tone? Can you rewrite it? It's rare that you ask a question, you get a response, and you just use that. So it's very much kind of a back and forth dialogue where you can communicate about what you want and evolve it. And then maybe after a little bit of conversation with the AI, then you get the final output that you need. So don't be afraid to kind of like ask it more things, be like, hey, what about this format? Or maybe go a little bit different in this direction. It can be really useful to just refining the ultimate result.
Yeah, thank you so much for that added context. And it's so true, because I've come to think of ChatGPT almost like my intern. And again, because it's a language model, it can have conversations with you. And that is the best way to refine results and to really get what you're looking for. All right, does anyone have any questions on anything we've covered so far? All right, looks like we are doing good. So let's get into report writing. And we don't need to spend a ton of time just running through the examples I have, but I think, again, it's really important to touch on that if you are using ChatGPT in your report writing, you need to be incredibly careful. I don't have to explain to anyone the liability that comes with a home inspection report. You all probably know that better than I do. But if you're using it in your report writing, you want to put out a product that you are fully comfortable with the homeowner and the realtor getting. And you don't want to include any inaccurate or misleading information. So when it comes to report writing, I am not a home inspector. You all could probably do this better than I have, but I was able to get some intel from home inspection inspectors who are using it for report descriptions and narratives. So something that ChatGPT is excellent at is summarizing. So if you give it the data points, it can basically make you sound better. So for example, if you were to jot down, there's X, Y, and Z issues with the roof, and then ask it to explain those defects in a way that makes sense to the homeowner, or in paragraph form, or however you want it delivered, it can be awesome. And yeah, I have someone at Sierra Home Inspections in the chat saying one example of how I've used ChatGPT in report writing is explain the pros and cons of PX plumbing lines, makes great info item to explain to buyers how the type of plumbing works. And that's exactly where I think ChatGPT can be so powerful in report writing. Like, as home inspectors, you are so in the industry, sometimes things that can make sense and seem intuitive to you, as you know, probably won't make sense to a home buyer, especially newer home buyers who haven't gone through any of that before. So one thing you can do is say, give it whatever data points you want and say, phrase this in a way that will make sense to someone who has never encountered plumbing before, or plumbing lines or anything like that. So I love that example, and that's exactly how I think it's a powerful tool to use. And it's really the same process. So like writing a blog, like using it for social media captions, you don't have to go about it differently just because you are writing a report. So the example I included here is if I was writing a home inspection report and there were some low risk concerns with the deck, scuffed railings, etc., and I asked it to summarize it for me in a bulleted list with explanations. And I was pretty happy with the results I got back. I am obviously not a home inspector, so if this is wrong or what it returned is bad, I'm sorry, but you see exactly like how you can use that as a tool and how that could speed up your processes even more. Like when you're going home and finalizing your report, instead of manually writing, you can just feed it the data you want and it can return something back that looks like a final product. So I personally think that's really cool. I hope you all do too. And if anyone tries this after the webinar, please email me and let me know how it's going for you, because I'm just so interested in this and how everyone can use it. So with that, we can get into the last one, which is emails. I don't know about you all, but writing emails can be a lift, and I'll run through this quickly because I don't want to spend my whole time here just sharing my screen. But you can use it to make an email template that can save you all this time in your marketing. So if I'm a home inspector and I want to reach out with realtors who I've worked with previously, but I haven't worked with in the last month or two, circumstance I'm sure some of you have come across, if not all, you can design an email template that you can send out to realtors, and it takes out that overhead work. And so in this prompt, I said I want this message to be brief, but remind realtors that we're still here if they want to use us. And I want it to have a lighthearted tone. Please acknowledge that they might have been busy, but we're still a great choice for their company. So something that, again, we can talk about is if you have an idea of what you want the final product to look, put that in there. You'll just get better results faster. And with that, I got the results of an email that I would feel with minimal editing comfortable sending out to my realtors if I was a home inspector. And it's just, again, an excellent tool to speed up your marketing processes. So with that, again, just always go over proofreading and rephrasing. You can also use ChatGPT to write individual or one-off emails if you're not up to email writing, or if you feel like you want to communicate better in a different voice. But with that, I think we can go into a live demo. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and this is where I'm going to ask for some audience participation. Can someone give me a task that they want ChatGPT to take on? I'll give it an answer, but if not, or I'll give it a minute to wait for an answer, but if not, JP, we can come up with something together. Cool. All right. Just have to go ahead and share my screen. Great. All right. Wonderful. Still no audience prompts? Oh, create a blog post for phase inspections. Great. So I personally do not know what phase inspections are, but let's see. All right. Explain why aluminum wiring is a hazard in homes. Let's start with this one. Can you all see ChatGPT on my screen okay? Everyone good? All right. Let's see.
One thing to note here too is that because she has the paid version, you have the option to choose 3.5 or 4. And there's been some discussion around the differences between the two. We've talked a little bit about that, but one other thing to note is that 3.5 is faster, and for smaller things where you don't need like a very powerful response, it might not be a problem to use 3.5. It's a lot. 4 has gotten a little faster, but that's kind of the distinction. But generally, I always try to use 4 if, maybe you don't have the paid version. It's locked. Never mind. Yeah, but I try to use default to 4 just because it's one of the more technical distinctions between the two is that 3 is trained on a smaller set of information, and 4 is like many, many more inputs. So it has a lot more resources to pull from.
Thanks for that explanation. And yeah, I did want to just show the free version because I want to emphasize that to use ChatGPT, you don't have to pay for it. It can be a great free tool. So let's do this. Can you explain why aluminum wiring is a hazard in a home? All right. It is thinking. It says, of course, I'd be happy to explain. And here we're getting a really long explanation. So aluminum wiring was commonly used in residential electrical systems in North America during the 1960s and 70s, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then it actually breaks this down into a 5 numbered list, and then it gives recommendations. So that's
we got a lot of fact checkers here to tell us if ChatGPT is on or off on their response.
Yeah, does anyone have thoughts on this prompt? All right, so let's just say, okay, that's a good explanation. Let's assume everything's right there. But that's way too long for the purpose I was wanting. So I can say that's a great explanation, but it's really long. Can you explain it more simply and briefly? And here we go. In simple terms, aluminum wiring is a hazard in homes because it can lead to electrical fires and safety issues. It expands and contracts more than copper, which can cause connections to loosen and overheat. It also forms an insulating layer over time, leading to poor connections and more heat. Compatibility issues with copper can cause corrosion and loose connections. As aluminum wiring ages, these hazards worsen, making it a safety concern. If you suspect aluminum wiring in your home, consult an electrician to assess and address any potential risks. Does anyone have any feedback on that answer? I saw Melissa, you said that it's not terrible, but an overload for a home buyer with technical knowledge. So I do think that in this case, we were able to get it down to a really simple explanation. And then from there, you have a paragraph that you can edit or further expand and prompt ChatGPT to change it if you want. So we did all of that in what, about 2 minutes? I think I saw one up here I really liked. Let me try to phrase it. We are introducing sewer scope to our inspections. How would we let agents and clients, buyers would want this? So assuming I'm understanding your question correctly, you're asking how we should market this. So let's do it. I'm a home inspector, and I'm adding sewer scope to our offerings. How can I market this to home buyers in my area? So we're getting a really great overview of how we can potentially market this. And as you see, it's churning out ideas really fast, but this is not exactly what I was looking for, right? I was hoping for more of an email or something that I can use immediately. So looking over this, I can say, I like the idea of sending a promotional email. Can you create an email for my company, XYZ Home Inspections, promoting our sewer scope add-on? And so here we go. It gives us a subject line. Discover the hidden secrets of your dream home with XYZ Home Inspections, new sewer scope add-on. So for me, that's a little cheesy. I'd want to edit that headline. But as you see, it gave us something immediately. And this is a template already that addresses the fact that your home buyer is in fact buying a new home, and then getting into the information that your sewer line might not be something you think about often, but it plays a critical role in your overall condition. And then it gives us 3 value props as to why. And so from there, it even took the liberty of adding a discount for all clients who schedule a sewer scope inspection throughout this month. So what I think is fantastic about this is, like, I gave it a very, very simple prompt. I didn't really take the time to go and edit my prompt to give it instructions for a good output. And this is what I have, and within just a matter of seconds. So you see why this can be a powerful tool, and it's fun to try this together, right? And again, I'm not a home inspector, but this all seems pretty right to me. Hitting the hidden problems, making informed decisions, and then the value add of just having peace of mind when you buy your home. So that's how it works in real time. I see someone over here saying, good Lord, your chatbot is on crack, slow as molasses over here. Yes, I have fast internet, but I'm actually not using the paid version right now. Someone in the chat said that they struggle with the free version being fast. For me, it depends. Maybe if you're trying to use this just like on your phone or not in an area where you had good Wi-Fi, it can be slow, but I've never had an issue with that. And with that, JP, do you have any final thoughts before we head over to Q&A?
No, I think you did a great job explaining kind of the pros and cons and showing us a real-time example. So nice work.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions that we can answer? Any thoughts of how you might use AI? We'll give it just a couple minutes. But as we wrap up, thank you to everyone for coming up today. This was a really fun thing to talk about, and we will follow up with the slide deck and the recording of this webinar should you want to go back and watch, and a ton of additional resources that we gathered to help you learn ChatGPT, to give you explanations and just different use cases, prompting strategies, anything you could really want to know if you get further into this. I think a note I want to end on is, it's not a perfect tool. You don't need to be an expert, but why this is valuable is because it's going to save you time. It can make your content better. And like with using this, you can potentially save the cost of outsourcing your blog writing, of, you know, having an admin pull together anything that has to do with social media captions or however you structure your business. This can be a huge time-saving cost, and you can actually put all of your hours and energy into other things that you might want to focus on more with your business or might feel more talented in than writing. So yeah, thank you everyone for coming today, and I really appreciate all the participation. Cool. All right, have a good day, everyone.